It's a hurricane. Right now it's kind of sunny, things are doing fine. Everyone thinks the Fed can handle this. That hurricane is right out there down the road coming our way. We just don't know if it's a minor one or Superstorm Sandy Sandy or Andrew or something like that. And you better brace yourself.
That was Jamie Dimon, the CEO of one of the most powerful private banks in the world, JP Morgan, which handles all the interbank reserve business between other banks and the Federal Reserve. Dimon warned that a giant storm is facing the world's economy. This metaphor of a hurricane refers to a number of mega risks that investors, big and small, consumers and businesses are all facing right now. Immense debt levels, higher and higher inflation, an energy crisis, and soon, very soon, massive job cuts. Right now, the leverage in the economy is off the charts, but the $250 trillion of world debt did not appear overnight. It was nearly 100 years in the making.
In 1934, after the Great Crash, 1932 and 3, they held these hearings, and they decided that unusual amounts of leverage were one cause of the problem in the 1929, and that it could pose dangers even to the economy. So they gave the Federal Reserve Board the right to establish how much people could borrow against stocks, margin requirements.
Which was a very good idea.
It was a terrific idea. The Federal Reserve, between 1934 and 1973, used that power, I think, 23 or 24 times. They even raised margins to 100%. But they were the regulators of determining whether excess leverage might have systemic problems associated with it. And then the rule in 1973 or 4 was 50%. The rule today is 50%. It has, in the last 40 plus years, first 40 some years at 23 changes. They went to 100%, they went down to 20, all kinds. Then it was a signal to the economy and all kinds of things. And essentially, Wall Street figured out how to get around that.
Warren Buffett was a bit too gentle with the debt situation. Leverage rules have been put aside for Wall Street and big corporations for decades. So much so that the debt in the US economy, and indeed across many economies in the world, is at a level that is unbelievably unsustainable, as each dollar of debt needs $1 of productive growth to service it. This is a big problem. Debt worldwide reached a massive 320% of global GDP. In other words, the world now has $250 trillion in global debt and growing. This is a catastrophe waiting to happen. As stated previously, each dollar of debt requires a dollar of growth to service it. Debt needs to be paid back. The International Monetary Fund, the IMF, just cut growth forecasts for 2022. The organization stated, the baseline forecast is for growth to slow from 6.1% last year to 3.2% in 2022, 0.4 percentage point lower than in the April 2022 World Economic Outlook. Lower growth, more leverage equals financial and, very likely, economic instability. Defaults are already happening across the world, most notably in the Chinese real estate sector, where Evergrande became the international poster child for the biggest default since the Lehman Brothers collapsed in 2008. The IMF explains that accommodative policies, cut-in policy rates in conjunction with quantitative easing to reduce firms' and households' borrowing costs, and the resulting favorable financial conditions have been supportive of growth, but also fueled an increase in leverage. Such an increase, while needed in the short term to cushion the global economy from the devastating impact of the pandemic, may be a vulnerability that poses a risk to financial stability further down the road. How far down the road are we speaking? A decade ago, it was years. 2 years ago was months. Now might very well be weeks. Are we too alarmist? Not when considering the other risks facing the global economy. A storm of massive proportions, as Dimon explained in the beginning of this video. One of them is the energy crisis. With the war in Eastern Europe, energy prices across most of the developed world have pushed inflation to multi-decades high. The shock has been so powerful that the European Commission proposed massive intervention in the energy markets to reduce the bills. The official statement from mid-September reads, the Commission is proposing an emergency intervention in Europe's energy markets to tackle recent dramatic price increases. The EU is confronted with the effects of a severe mismatch between energy demand and supply, due largely to the continued weaponization by Russia of its energy resources. To ease the increased pressure this puts on European households and businesses, the Commission is now taking a next step in tackling this issue by proposing exceptional electricity demand reduction measures, which will help reduce the cost of electricity for consumers, and measures to redistribute the energy sector's surplus revenues to final customers. This follows on from previously agreed measures on filling gas storage and reducing gas demand to prepare for the upcoming winter. The Commission is also continuing its work to improve liquidity for market operators, bring down the price of gas, and reform the electricity market design for the longer term. Some big names in the world of economics and finance have their doubts about the success of such measures, however. Corruption and an illusory electricity market are some of the reasons why the European Commission's intervention may fail.
The thing to remember is that electricity prices, the prices that people in New York and Los Angeles, here in Athens, everywhere, the prices we pay have risen by a much greater factor than the cost of producing electricity. So you've got the oligarchs that are dominating this state market, that pseudo market, that fake market, benefiting tremendously out of this crisis.
When prices increase, inflation acts as a hidden tax on consumers, leading to people spending less and less. However, one spending is another's income. If people start to spend less, then businesses also sell less, and economic growth goes down, pulling with it the job market. For now, the labor market across most developed countries, even those worst hit by the energy crisis, like the UK, have been holding on strongly. Unemployment rates are, in some cases, the lowest they have been in about 50 years. Reuters reported recently that Britain's jobless rate hit its lowest since 1974, but the drop was due mostly to a fall in the size of the workforce, and there were other signs that the country's jobs boom is petering out, adding to the Bank of England's inflation headache. But for how long will the job markets hold out? Immense debt burden becoming more expensive to service as central banks raise interest rates to combat inflation, higher energy prices pressuring consumers and thus acting as a drag on economic growth, and general instability are all heavy weights on the labor markets. Some of the biggest companies in the world, such as Tesla, have already cut their workforce in anticipation of a massive recession.
A year from now, I think our headcount will be higher in both salaried and obviously in hourly. But in the short term of the next few months, we expect to see, like I said, roughly a 10% reduction in salaried workforce, which is actually just really only a 3.5% reduction in total headcount.
A 10% reduction in salaried workforce is massive, even if Elon Musk was trying to sound optimistic in order not to scare investors. Tesla is in no means alone in preparing for layoffs. A Business Insider article reported recently that companies like Facebook, Microsoft, and Google are preparing for an economic downturn, some of which are considering job cuts. If these business giants are preparing for the worst, smaller businesses have no chance. News that local shops are closing are growing by the week. The Guardian, a British newspaper, reported that many small businesses, family-owned enterprises, may not survive this winter. Small business owners across Britain have told of sleepless nights and fears they will not survive the winter due to looming increases in their energy bills. Firms have experienced a 424% rise in gas costs and 349% increase in electricity since February 2021, data from the Federation of Small Businesses, FSB, shows. The situation is not much different across Europe. When the local economy suffers this much, it is only a matter of time until the hurricane comes to shores and brings the whole economy down.